Welcome to Talkkcade, a podcast based on reviewing WWF, ECW, and WCW content on a week-by-week basis from a first-time viewer's perspective. I'm AdvyDeven, first-time 90s wrestling viewer and co-founder of WatchaMania. We're currently in the week of May 22nd to May 28th of 1994, starting with WCW Slamboree. So before we get started, though, just want to ask that you drop a like on this video as it helps us a lot, and do subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to always on for notifications. Talkkcade always seems to come out some random hour of the day or night, so you want to catch it when it drops. You'll also be able to catch when we go live for our AEW watch-alongs of Dynamite and Rampage, currently here on the channel weekly, if AEW is your cup of tea. That all being said, though, let's dive into some WCW. So we get a long video package promoting the crossover of the past and the present in regards to pro wrestling history, and Gene welcomes us officially, introducing the Legends in order. There was this awkward bit where Terry Funk didn't come out when introduced in the lineup, but the graphics and Gene eventually got back on track, and it very much seemed like Terry legit just no-showed it, which was concerning considering he was on the card. We got like legit 20 legends in this lineup, including Larry the Axe Hennig. Gotta pop out of me, see Mr. Perfect's dad out there, and it made me wonder, what's up with Mr. Perfect in WWF? They send us to Tony Schiavone and Heenan, who talk up the show, including speculating who Ric Flair's opponent is. And they send we're told of it being very busy behind the scenes in WCW, and Tony brings on Nick Bockwinkel, who's holding the International Heavyweight title. He says that at this time he'd like to bring out Sting. So there are layers to this. First, Nick pulls out a letter from the International Championship Committee and reads that they've come to record the title match in Japan between Rude and Sting as a no contest after the use of the title belt and subsequent knee off the top rope. Interestingly, this is a kayfabe cover-up for Rick Rude getting injured in Japan after that, and I found it weird that this angle and this random committee had to come into play. As a result, the title is being returned to Sting. However, Sting claims that he never wants a world title to be won in a boardroom, and that he'd rather face Vader to be the champion, to which Nick approves. And so, the match is set for tonight. We head down to the ring after like 10 minutes for our opening bout, finally, between Steve Austin and Johnny B. Bad, in what was a decent match for the US title. I think this match suffered from opening the show, though, because with the introduction of the Legends and the news about Rick Rude coming beforehand, I think that if this match and the next match were swapped, the Philly crowd would have loved it as a hot, blazing start to the in-ring action for the night. Probably would have been really good to make up for all of the monologue beforehand. I suppose monologue, dialogue, oof. There was a few things from the start I found odd. Right before the ref went to get the title from Steve, Johnny snatched it for a moment to mess with him, but he eventually settled and started the match. It was weird, it's like nana nana boo boo kind of thing. I didn't really get it. As they were looking to lock up, Austin kept his hand out for a handshake, and Johnny kept swatting it away or tried to turn it into a grip or something, but eventually bit and shook Austin's hand. And like Johnny, I was expecting a heel antic, but it was just a handshake. And then they got into it. Don't really know what to make of it, but it felt worth noting. They took a while to really get the pace going, but once they did, it was a fun match till the end there. There was some nice grappling going on in the early bout, with Johnny getting to really show off his amateur skill for a bit there. I liked that. To Schiavone's point, Johnny is notably working at a slower, more methodical pace as opposed to speeding it up. And I kind of agree with him there. Heenan expresses that he thinks that's a mistake, as Steve Austin had to last, and that it's better to try and get it over as fast as possible. Now, I don't know all about that, but I do agree that Johnny B. Bad not working his more traditional style hurt him here. Once Johnny started firing up, he was getting a bit of a mixed reaction, but they got more and more behind him once he got a visual pin. Unfortunately, the ref didn't count it as he was caught up with Colonel Parker, who is all over this show. Johnny inadvertently causes Steve Austin to punch out the Colonel, and Johnny rolls him up. It's only a 2 count, but the bell keeper still rang the bell. Johnny, Steve, and the ref, who clarified too, kept working, never missing a beat, but the crowd was clearly stirring from the whole thing. B-Bad hit a diving sunset flip for a 2 count, which I think didn't help things. And when he sets up for his left-hand finish, Steve Austin gets him in the headlock that B-Bad kind of turned into a back suplex. Weirdly enough, though, Austin kind of no-sold the back suplex and rolled over onto Johnny very awkwardly to get the 3 count. The Bellkeep was hesitant to ring the bell this time, but he did so, and that was the finish. A very screwy finish. B-Bad cold-cocked stunning Steve to try and get his heat back, but the crowd didn't really pop for it. Austin's music kept playing during it as well, so I don't think that really helped. But the crowd already liked Austin more than Bad, so this finish did not land at all. And that's unfortunate because I feel like Johnny B. Bad, this could have been a chance to like help move him up the card, but this definitely feels like he's going to just kind of fall back to where he was before, and I hope I'm wrong in that regard. There's a little bit of the there's a little bit from the host set with Gene alongside Wahoo McDaniel and Ernie the Cat Lad. And we cut to a Dusty Rhodes pre-tape. He's out in Hollywood working overtime, and it really doesn't say too much other than that he can't be there, and wishes luck to Dustin and WCW, a great PPV, pay-per-view. I loved his promo, I gotta say. I even made an emote out of it, put it on the Discord. Dusty is amazing. Well-placed, too, and we'll get into that later as to why this pre-tape was well-placed. Because now, it's time to get into my favorite match of this card. Tully Blanchard and Terry Funk have a go. Oh man, do they have a go. Terry comes out looking fantastic, and I honestly dig his entrance theme for what I can hear of it. Terry Funk actually comes out, as he skipped out on the Legends lineup at the top of the show, and gets into the ring crowd and the ringside crowd area to embrace the Philly crowd and the ECW chants, which admittedly weren't picking up very well. Either they weren't as many ECW fans in the show at the show as I thought there would be, or the crowd wasn't mic'd very well. Probably the former. As he gets out, though, we got Tully Blanchard up on the apron, and Terry throws his chops at Tully, which sets him off. Them's fighting words to Tully, and he dives onto Terry. Hams are thrown. You can hear the smacks. These are not worked punches, folks. They are throwing these hands. And they're scrapping heavy. At one point, Terry throws some crutches into the ring, and I'm pretty sure those were Kevin Sullivan's for later, as you know he fancies himself a crutch. Those two legends had a mission statement in this match to show they can go, to show this ain't fake, and to show these youngins how to do it. Terry repeated the spot from When Worlds Collide, where he brings a piece of wood and leans it diagonal on the rope to pile drive someone through it. Pile drives Tully through it. He honestly was blowing my mind the way Tully was working this match, because I never saw him being the type to work this style. But hey, goes to show what I know, right? A second pile driver to Blanchard back in the ring, but Funk misses a moonsault anyways as Tully just barely rolls out. And we're back to some scrapping in the corners the moment we realize this match effing rules. Screw a Four Horsemen reunion. Have Tully Blanchard go to ECW with Arn and fuck up the Funk Brothers. Imagine that feud in ECW. It'd be nuts. Book it, Todd. We didn't get Arn in this match at all, which I felt like was a missed opportunity from a narrative standpoint. I've talked about it here enough, where I think there's enough pieces floating around with the Four Horsemen and the ECW shenanigans with Shane and Terry, respectively, and even Heyman to a degree. Well, dangerously to a degree. What we did get, though, was a funny botch. Terry goes for that top rope pile driver onto a chair that he did to Sabu that one time. I can't remember the exact show. But the fall forward made it look more like a powerbomb that landed Terry seated in the chair he was trying to pile drive Tully through. And to make up for it, Terry just starts clubbing Tully in the chest, which broke down into them throwing more hands while in this very awkward position, which did get the crowd riled up, as they were very clearly like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen kind of thing. In a strange way, in the most chaotic way possible, it got the match back on track. But Blanchard knocks the ref away, who's been trying to stop him from pursuing Terry to the outside, and Funk starts whacking Tully with a branding iron as he comes out, bending it around his neck, and the ref calls for the DQ for getting hit. all these weapons, the pile driver through the thing, we got the chair in the ring, we get the crutches, we get the iron. The shoving the ref was the call. This ref definitely worked ECW rules. That's for true. Because that's pretty much what they do in ECW. All right, do whatever the fuck you want to each other. Don't you touch me. The crowd rightfully chants bullshit, though, despite this being an ECW crowd to some extent. We get it. And Terry kind of throws a fit, for a lack of a better term, as he tries to embody the crowd's frustrations. And I kept expecting Arn to come out to help Tully. Because on top of Arn talking all this stuff about wanting to reunite the Four Horsemen, he's got beef with Terry Funk from literally a week ago at When Worlds Collide. This really felt like wasted potential, but I'm sure there was more to it that I'm aware of. You know, for all I know, there was probably legit heat coming out of the ECW situation with Arn. Like, I don't know these things until I'm told these things by people who do. So, we're sent to Jesse the Body Ventura. Meh. Big meh from me. He invites into the shot Ric Flair, and also big meh from me, who talks about living up to his word at the end of the last week's Saturday night. He says that he doesn't care who's under the mask. He's always ready. To tell you something, counter went up to 1 in this promo. We get a shit woo from Ventura after Flair's woo, and we go down to the ring for the next match, which is Larry Zybisko versus Steven Regal. We learn it's indeed not a title match, at least us here, the WatchaMania audience. I feel like it was more clear to the WCW audience by this point, but I wasn't picking up on that. And it really telegraphed that Larry was winning the match. But I also really liked this match, for very different reasons that I liked the previous match. Bit too long of a stare down and the like at the beginning, but once they finally got started, it was non-stop action. And I get the stare down at the beginning. It was very much Regal playing mind games in the sense of, you're not even worth my time. I can't believe I'm actually in this match about to wrestle you, kind of thing. But then once it started happening, he sort of, oh shit, he's good. Oh shit, he's good. And it did a really good job of telling that exact story. Much more elegantly conveyed than that, I assure you. As this was my first Zybisko match, and he sold me on his Living Legend moniker. I was seeing things I wasn't ready for in this match or this time era. For starters, there was this lovely spinning back kick from Larry at lightning fast speed, like he looks like he should not be able to move that fast. And the majority of this match went to Zybisko, really. I think it worked well because Regal had needed some humbling for months now, and he's particularly gotten under Larry's skin up until this point. And you know what this match had nothing of? Patriotism. It was just a match. I feel vindicated in trying to look past all of that because I was excited for this match from a wrestling standpoint, because I'm done with the patriotism in wrestling. It doesn't need to be a thing. It was a thing. It was a great thing for wrestling for a long time. It doesn't need to be now. Not even here in the 90s. And, but I know who Regal is through and through. And I've only heard phenomenal things about Zybisko. So that was really what I was clinging to in terms of like what was going to make this match be a good match. Because the angle that they were booking was telling me that I wasn't going to be interested in the match, but knowing the workers made me, I should probably turn this mic down a tad bit. The crowd wasn't the loudest, but they were definitely into this match, and I'ma sit and watch this kind of thing. Either that or this venue didn't carry sound very well, which is a thing that seems reoccurring throughout the show, so maybe that is a factor. I just couldn't say one way or the other for certain. And they got me good for the finish. Sir William cracked Larry Zybisko over the back of the head with that umbrella, and Regal goes for the butterfly suplex. But Zybisko backdrops him into the cover with the arm still locked, got the win, and I popped with the crowd. And if Terry and Tully weren't on this card, this would have been my favorite match, because this played up to my love for the technical aspect of professional wrestling, from the common sense aspect of professional wrestling, the logic nut aspect, if you will. So next up, Gene has Terry Funk on the main set, and he asked why Terry no-showed at the top of the show. Terry goes on to acknowledge the legendary stature of some of the other legends, but clarifies that he's the legend in the most hostile city, Philadelphia. Claims that there are 3 things in Philly that can be a great danger to you: the local polluted river, the sure kill expressway, and face a fella like him. He then gets all excited about it being live. He tells Gene he can't ever get rid of him. Can't get him off there because he won't leave. Gene tries to segue, but Terry continues to rant on about how he can do whatever he wants. Like talk about that egg-sucking dog, Dusty Rhodes. Says he'd like to whoop on him, but he can't because he's the son of a carpenter. So maybe he could whoop on the son of a carpenter. And that they haven't seen the last of him tonight. No, we have not. But again, we'll get back to that. We go down to the ring with Gordon Sully at a podium posting the official Hall of Fame induction, and Luthez himself presenting the award to the inductees. It's admittedly a bit dull, but it still is wonderful to see these legends get honored in this regard. I actually didn't know that WCW had a Hall of Fame until last year's Slamboree, so I found this neat. Those who are inducted are Harley Race, The Crusher, Ernie the Cat Lad, the Assassin #1, Ole Anderson, and Dick the Bruiser, represented by his daughter. Not really much to say about it. It was a quiet, monotone occasion. Not exactly a bad thing that it was that way, just it was that way, and it was what it was. So we got a quick bit from Colonel Parker and Jesse the Body, but down to the ring for the Bullrope match. And this match won me over in the best way. What I thought could have been the worst on the card really tried to follow Terry and Tully's lead. These boys got to fighting before the Bullrope was even put on Buck. The bell rang too, which confused me. Dustin eventually fought it onto him, which actually a neat bit of realism to it, I gotta say, but it's still confusing. The match started before then. And there's one thing that sold, if there was one thing that this match sold me on, it was that these two lads don't like each other. They were pretty stiff in this match, particularly towards the end. We got a chant from the crowd, which I think is "We Want Blood." God damn, y'all. Because they got, like, everything but this match. Well, they got everything but in this match. So, I don't know why blood was necessary. Dustin wrapped Buck's leg around the turnbuckle, and man, did Buck look pissed and hurt as all hell when he kept smacking that thing. And Buck looked seething like, oh man, if this wasn't a show, I'd fuck you up kind of thing. And there's no shortage of choking with the rope, mainly from Dustin to Buck as revenge for the last Saturday night's ending. A gnarly visual, which, yeah, admittedly a little disturbing, but at the same time, I kind of get how it worked for this story. And it was a gnarly match overall. Dustin had his shirt pulled over his head and was whooped on the back by Buck with his belt. This was a southern fight, y'all. He worked overtime on trying to use the bull rope to tie up Dustin to the post outside by going under the bottom turnbuckle and out and around a few times. I thought it was a very creative match in how they told this culmination of a blood feud. Beat the Bunkhouse match by a country mile. Dustin eventually got free and undid all the tangling. And back in the ring, the ref gets taken out inadvertently, and Parker gets in to try and help Buck. It backfires as Dustin uses that trusty drop kick, despite being held back by Buck, to take out the Colonel. He whacks Buck with the bell and wins the match. Great match, but it couldn't even breathe as Terry Funk comes out and beats the holy hell out of Dustin. Buck and Parker join in. They all stomp Dustin before producers come out and break it up. The crowd got their blood. Oh man, did they get their blood in this post-match beatdown. I just want to, even though the show itself glossed over, I want to say that this was my favorite Dustin Rhodes match of this era, bar none. The man went out there and put it all on the line, and big shout out to Bunkhouse Buck as well, as this was far be his best performance I've seen him in thus far. And Bunkhouse Buck has not landed with me at all as a worker or character up until this point, so I mean, kudos to both of them, because this had that classic Slamboree feel from last year of, oh man, this is something I am looking forward to in no way. So to get past that is a feat. So Terry Funk is unhinged, and apparently that branding iron was hot. So I think this can be a fun angle if Terry's going to be sticking around in WCW, but it's one of those things where it's like this could just be a one and done type of deal. Up next, we had Ric Flair versus Colonel Parker's newest stud, Barry Windham. The happiness I expressed was inaudible. Literally, my mic's audio cut on stream because I was yelling so loud. Since we started watching in 93, two men have legitimately captivated me more than any other. Vader and Barry Windham. Both for very different and specific reasons, but I love me some Barry. So Rick retained his title. Ha! It was a great match. I love seeing Barry work, and the chemistry between Horsemen is like no other. The match was very evening. The match was very even. It was a very even technical bout with some dirty antics from both guys throughout. I really loved the great narrative being told here. There wasn't very much of a babyface heel dynamic as much as just two lads that don't like each other for storied history. What I don't love, though, is Barry not being world champion. He should always be world champion. I didn't see his return coming, so I really appreciate how much sense this made narratively. My main concern now is where from here with Barry. I feel like because Flair won with a diving crossbody, Ricky Steamboat's finish, that they're going back to that. I can also see Barry getting a rematch in some capacity, as he sold that loss like Flair fluked him. And then we got Hogan lurking in the background. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Time will tell. Something else I found interesting. They brought attention to Sherry at ringside during this match more than any other. They brought her up several times, but this match particularly was a lot. Imagine this somehow tying back to that Shane Douglas promo at ECW when Worlds Collide a week prior to this. With Arn not turning up after Tully's match, I'm not the most hopeful, but I shall still dream, because I want to see this. So speaking of the Enforcer, we got a pre-tape promo by David Schultz. Yes, that's apparently his nickname in the hockey world. The special guest referee of the Broadstreet Bully match for the WCW Tag Team Championship. This was also a really fun match. Like, this is the theme of the night. It was just a fun show. It was effectively just ECW with a bigger venue, better lighting, and more cameras. They were barely in the ring 5 seconds before they all spilled to the outside using every weapon they could find in sight. Sags and Jack fought all up and down the ramp, but they spent a bulk of it at ringside. A trash can got two-dimensionalized. A photographer's camera got used like a mace. Kevin Sullivan got in a few crutch shots. It was a good time if you're into this kind of stuff. David Schultz really just had a front seat to human death fighting, just kind of letting it happen. They kept fighting all the way up and down the ramp, and at the end of the ramp off the stage, Sags set up a table. Cactus got put through the table to call back to Spring Stampede, but a minute later he was putting the table through Sags, literally suplexing the table to land flat onto Sags. It's like, hey, Cactus Jack, you can't hit him with the same bump twice. It's like he becomes resistant to it or something. Because he died for 3 weeks after falling off the stage at Spring Stampede, and then he comes back, he falls off the stage through a table, and a minute later he's like, Jesse said it best. The Nasty Boys shine most in these hardcore environments. Their last match with Cactus and Max Payne was really good for that reason. Something I liked before and during this match was the fact that this generation was being touted as greater and crazier than the previous generation, without insulting the previous generation. This whole event did a very good job of telling us these previous generations are great, but this current generation has become greater. The finish came when Sags, back in the ring, shoved David Schultz for presumably being too slow to get down to the count. Sags went to grab David's hockey stick and used it on a bloody Jack in the ring, but David wasn't having it. David started punching Sags so much a hockey game damn near broke out in this wrestling match. Cactus then clocked Sags with a hockey stick and won off a quick count. Sullivan and Brian Knobbs were still on the outside whacking each other with whatever they could get their hands on. And it was weird that David didn't care that the stick was being used by Jack, so it wasn't about the hockey stick, it seemed. Guess he just didn't like the Nasty Boys, and he's right not to. That being said, Sags drops Jack after the match and starts laying into him with the hockey stick, just as David Schultz was on the apron with the belt, just kind of like watching it happen. Max Payne came walking down the ramp with Sags' back to the ramp, was close enough to take this gnarly guitar shot over the back of his head, and Sags was out cold for an alarming amount of time. Like, I started to think this wasn't a worked guitar alarming amount of time. I imagine that the guitars used in wrestling are worked. It could just be a very thin model that is ideal for use in spots like this. But either way, it looked like it wasn't executed right. And Sags got legit hurt from it. Jack, Payne, and Sullivan all kind of chase Brian Knobbs up the ramp, where he's cornered from behind by Dave Sullivan on crutches, who knocks Knobbs clean out. We stay with Ventura and Schiavone on commentary for a few minutes as Medical and Knobbs help Sags out the ring, who was indefinitely unconscious for several minutes. Something I was just kind of brushing off until this moment is when they sent it down to Gene to promote the hotline. It was the third time in the night, I believe. The leading question was, should WCW ban Cactus Jack from competing? I was just dismissing it because Jack was in a title match this evening, which he won as I was hoping. Just felt like that was the story they were telling. But Gene promoted it in a way that he seemed unnerved by the previous tag match and really towed the line of not pissing off this very hardcore crowd, but also indicating that those who didn't like this match should say so. Brought on Lou Thez and Vern Gagne to have a quick word. Gene sent us back to the ring as Vader's music hits. It's time! Vader comes on out and starts doing a bit of a boogie on the stage. Small jig, if you will. He is hyped, and he is the man. He is the man who didn't win this match, unfortunately. But, man, he came out here like he was. No no boo-boo face from Vader, who faced Sting in yet another banging match, as these lads tend to put on. Sting came out meaning business as well. Wasn't playing up to the crowd much, just looked very focused. And I personally interpreted this, oh man, I'm about to have a match with Vader. I mean, it wasn't 6 months ago that Flair was saying goodbye to his family for the final time because Vader was assuredly going to murder Flair in that ring like they were in Game of Thrones. Sting is keeping the narrative consistent. Appreciate him for that. These two stared each other down and really tried to find an opening at the beginning. I liked the vibe of this match. Vader, in calculated fashion, slowly backed Sting into the corner. He took advantage of Sting trying to kick his way out and started landing those classic Vader clubbing blows that look like he's just trying to knock the limbs off your body. This first portion of this match was all Vader, and Sting was just trying to survive. He started mounting an offense on Vader. However, Vader quickly found himself taking off his mask. The power limiter has been removed. Game on. Didn't do much for him, though, as he got hit with a clean vertical suplex from Sting as he got back in. Like, clean, like, stalled fully vertical for a good moment. These guys are so good. I love that when Vader finally hit a Vader bomb on Sting, the ref literally bounced off the mat while laying on it. It got a chuckle out of me. They did a good job to remind us of the history of these two men, and they were really the Cena Orton of this era, in that they were the two top guys that always ended up facing each other. Vader decided to lock in Regal's what the fuck lock just to show us he can do everything. We get a third time in the corner where Vader starts unloading these pot shots again, but Sting has had enough. Started firing up in a way that lit the crowd ablaze. Sting cut a corner at one point, get a force test out to get out of a force test of strength. He plucked Vader in the eyes after Vader linked his hands. Hit my mic there, apologies about that. And he ducked a flying clothesline, which led Sting to take out the ref as a result. Now, Vader delivered a one-handed chokeslam that would make 911 blush, and gets a visual pin on him, but no ref count. He tries holding up Sting for a chair shot from Harley, but Sting moves. Hope Vader doesn't take a chair to Harley's knees for that. Arn. There was an awesome visual of Vader catching Sting mid-stinger splash and holding him up like there was nothing to be done about it. Unfortunately, after slamming him down, he missed a moonsault when he arguably should have just won. Harley Race tried coming off the top onto Sting, but he moved so Harley landed on Vader, and then Sting hit his own diving splash on Vader for the win, and is your new/still WCW International Champion. So Vader comes over to Schiavone and Heenan after the match and celebration, all that, demanding that they say he didn't lose. A bit of banter, and Tony Schiavone sends us home. Now, this pay-per-view was awesome. one of the best actually probably the best WCW pay-per-view I've seen. I can't think of a WCW pay-per-view I've seen that was better than this, in my opinion. Slamboree 93 was the worst I've seen yet, so it was something Jesse and I were not looking forward to when it was first announced. Though, when they announced some of the matches for it, and we realized that WCW and ECW were doing business to some extent, changed our tune. Now, normally, when WCW does that, it falls on its face or underdelivers in some capacity. This pay-per-view was no such occasion. So, with that being said, we move on to the WWF with Monday Night Raw the following night. And the show starts off with a recap of last week, where Earthquake beat Yoko in a WWF sumo match. As it turns out, however, Earthquake was wrecked by Yokozuna on the WrestleMania Revenge Tour in California after Yoko beat him in a regular match. So he won't be able to face Owen tonight in the King of the Ring qualifier. And they're making their Ohio debut for Raw as Vince and Randy welcome us to the show. We get the banging intro. We get a nice purple and yellow gear from Randy Savage that made him look like he was paying ode to SpongeBob 6 years before it was launched. It might be 5 years at this point. Not quite certain. I'm not sure if it was 99 or 2000. Might have even been 98. I don't know. This is not a SpongeBob podcast, though. So we're right into the action with Owen Hart in a King of the Ring qualifier against a substitution in the form of Doink. Owen got the win in the match I didn't care for all that much, to be honest. I love Owen and he can get even kind of into Doink's antics, but I didn't want to see these two cross over right now. I may just be biased because Doink hasn't really been for me since the start of Retro WatchaMania. I do appreciate that it was at least a believable crossover of these two characters. Owen was not about the antics, and Doink was still getting out wrestled despite being competition for many in the ring. But even when he hit the occasional hip toss, Owen was just beside himself, like, what? He had a basic wrestling maneuver on me? How dare. Like, it's fantastic stuff. I love when Owen's over the top. He does it just right. Dink distracted Owen from the inside a bit, which is pretty much the only time Doink can sustain control over the pace, until the end where he was mounting some offense on Owen. However, Jeff Jarrett snatched Dink to distract Doink on the outside, and Owen rolled up Doink for the win. The match was nice for what it was, but Doink did not need to be protected here. I feel like a more decisive win could have served Owen better, but better than him losing to Doink, right? Which I feel like in a different era of Monday Night Raw would have been the booking decision. Up next, we had the King of the Ring report, and we learned that Double J and Owen Hart qualified for different matches, as opposed to the previous 4 people in the tournament who qualified going straight down to fill the bracket. Suppose I get it. Can't have 2 heels having a match. Well, at least that's their mentalities on the matter at this time. We learn that the final 2 qualifier matches will be 1-2-3 Kid versus Adam Bomb on Superstars, and Tatanka versus Jimmy Del Rey on next week's Raw. We get a promo from a very growly Diesel. He makes one big dick innuendo in his promo about how he knew that Brett would take on the Big D, but that he heard some hesitation in the Hitman's voice when he did. We also found out that Yokozuna and Crush will be challenging the Head Shrinkers for the WWF World Tag Team titles. Why? Have they literally ever teamed? Like, ever. Like, has it at least happened on Superstars once? Like, say so if it has. We get a promo of Roddy Piper in a gym, boxing with a punching bag. We more or less reiterate previous points about the winnings going straight to the hospital. He says that while Jerry Lawler wants to compare him to a dinosaur, he's taking that as a compliment, considering that Jurassic Park was the greatest selling movie ever. You know, I have a hard time believing that Jurassic Park thing, but this King of the Ring show is shaping up nicely. I expect some shorter matches, however. We're setting up to have 10 matches on the card right now, between the 7 for the tournament, the World Title match, the World Tag Title match, and this grudge match they just plugged. So up next, we had Duke the Dumpster Dross making his debut in a winning effort against Barry Horowitz. Nice, simple, and effective match. Was great in getting over his strength, and he keeps the match moving at a nice pace. So even though it was a little longer than I would have liked, I didn't really realize until afterwards. Barry got a nice bit of offense, targeting the left shoulder, and there was a real nice spine buster from Duke. Like, it would have made Arn blush. Anderson better stay on point or it could become known as the Double D Spinebuster. He should have just won with it, by the way, in my opinion, but he ended up winning with a jumping elbow drop instead, a running jumping elbow drop instead. It was a very effective debut, I'd say. I still think the gimmick is trash, as figurative as it is literally, but Duke has potential for in-ring for certain. Oh my gosh, words. But he has potential in-ring for certain. Probably not going to cut that out, but I still feel the need to correct myself. We returned from break in the middle of an IRS promo as he walked down to the ring, which I think was a bad call. They should have come back at the end of the promo when he was already in the ring. Was just, pay your taxes or move to a different country, like it always is. Got a win over Gary Sabeau in what I feel like was one of IRS's more interesting matches. I'll give him that. It wasn't anything outstanding that made it a better experience. They just tended to stay a bit more animated in this match. There was more to see happen. You know, save for the rest hold that IRS has to have, but he won on the left arm clothesline to warm up for the tournament. Good for him. We cut to a clip from last Saturday's Superstars during the qualifier match between Double J and Double L, where Crush bonked Lex's head off the steps while the ref wasn't looking. Lex, of course, cost himself the match, as he got up before the 10 count and opted to run after Crush, who was on the stage, instead of getting in and continuing the match. I mean, after SummerSlam 93, gotta commit to throwing away opportunities, right? We opened King's Court with Randy Savage catching strays on the way to Jerry Lawler, inviting Roddy Piper to be a guest on King's Court. His current guest for the week, Lex, comes on out, and we hear from Jerry Lawler how he's been singing the blues about not qualifying for King of the Ring. Lex essentially says the only reason that he's not in the tournament is because of Crush. Jerry Lawler claims he's going to expose Lex Luger. Says that Lex jumped Crush from behind and rammed his shoulder into the ring post, which put Crush in a sling. It's never mentioned that Lex actively chose to not continue the match, which is understandable, as that kind of means the being upset part makes no sense. But still, it would have been funny to see Jerry Lawler just be like, you cost yourself the match. Commentary is going on about how they didn't hear about that, questioning if it happened on the Revenge Tour, but Lex made it sound like he knew what Jerry Lawler was talking about, which really confused me, because they were alluding to it being a made-up injury. After claiming he say it to Crush anytime, any place, Crush comes out in a sling to confront Lex. Crush says that Lex jumped him from behind because he can't beat him face-to-face. Claims that he's stronger and tougher than Lex, and that as long as he's in the WWF, Lex won't amount to anything. Crush claims that he didn't have an arm on his if he didn't have his arm in a sling, he'd get the job done right now. Lex eventually bops him with a clothesline, and it's revealed that Crush's arm is fine as he spills out of the ring, catching himself with the arm that was in the sling. They telegraphed it a bit, but it was a fun angle for what it was, I suppose. I think it was also Crush's best promo. I've been harsh on his promo since he's turned heel, but he's had more confidence and conviction here than I've seen in the past. Perhaps he just needed to find his footing for this character, and I'm here for it. So we have Ted DiBiase on commentary for this next match, which is Nikolai Volkov versus Omega star Matt Hardy, up-and-comer indie talent. So fun fact, I completely missed that this jobber was Matt Hardy. They announced his name while on camera they announced his name while the camera was on commentary, and they never gave him a nameplate, but even then, I didn't see his face at first. I was just caught up on Nikolai's viciousness, and I also loved that he outright backstepped to avoid a springboard crossbody from Matt. Hardy was very green at this time, but it was still cool to see this little feature of sorts. I try not to outright acknowledge stars for who they become on this show as to not throw off the dynamic of it. But I mean, it's Matt Hardy. And I find it funny that I completely missed it the first time when I normally catch these things with other stars that get featured later on in the 90s and 2000s. So Nikolai veteran the hell out of Matt in this quick 3 to 4 minute match. He is not here for a by the hour paycheck. He came here to win the match and go home. Ted DiBiase in commentary is informed that Taker was sighted in New Orleans, but Ted reassures us that he's the only one with resources and that Undertaker will be his once again, rest assured. I find this interesting. Could be Undertaker's first angle back. I apologize. I am a thirsty boy. So we get a word from Lawler in the back, who says that next week he'll have Brett on King's Court. Okay, let's see how that goes. See if a scrap don't happen. Brett doesn't take shit, especially from Lawler, who damn near busted his back with a throne this time last year. And that was Raw. Fair show as usual. I could have stood to see less doink, however. I'm curious to see about Duke Dross. Maybe he can be something. So now, from ordinary to extreme. And so we start up with a recap of Mikey Whipwreck fluking away the television title in the flukiest way possible, with Pitbull not even realizing he was getting pinned, and was instead still selling a ball shot. We cut back to the main ECW set, I suppose, with Jay Sully getting an interview with Mikey Whipwreck. Funny enough, sorry about all the adjustment. Mikey is facing the wrong camera at first and has to get readjusted. He says that even if he were to die tomorrow, and he might, that they can never take away the fact that he was champion. He says that he won't be a closet champion and that he'll defend against anybody. And this is about as wholesome as it gets in the land of the hostile, if you ask me. Then it just got hostile, as Mikey finds out his first title defense is against WCW Tag Team Champion Kevin Sullivan. He wasn't billed as such, but at this time chronologically, he is champion, so I'm rolling with it. Let me have my 90s Forbidden Door, damn it. ECW's intro this week is Loser by Beck, as we get a highlight video package around Mikey Whipwreck getting wrecked. We get right into the action with Kevin Sullivan coming down for that very match. And poor Whipwreck, he doesn't even have any music. He still has this title, though. He skirts by on a DQ win, which, if I'm getting correctly, happens sometimes because of weapons, but otherwise because when the ref gets hit. The latter was the case here, because it definitely wasn't weapons. 30 seconds in, and Kevin Sullivan has Mikey in the crowd throwing chairs at Mikey's head over and over. Not hit with them, thrown. Paulie, who's on commentary for this match, acknowledges that Kevin Sullivan won the WCW tag title this past weekend, even if not specifically. Eventually, back at ringside, he was getting hit with everything from chairs to sodas to tables. Hell, the table was even hitting Mikey. He's just the local punching bag based on his earlier video package. We took a break in the middle of the match, and we came back to Kevin Sullivan halfway through bonking a Barney toy off of Mikey's head. I love Kevin Sullivan, y'all. He's so good. And that being said, the finish comes when the ref DQs Kevin Sullivan because the ref got in the way, as Sullivan was doing some knee barges to a Tree of Woe Whipwreck. He's running from one corner to the other, but the ref got in the way of it and just got knocked the fuck out. Sullivan goes off and starts fish hooking Mikey with a turnbuckle post until the ref finally gets him off. This match was kind of a disaster, but part of that is a green ref and a green champ, and the other part of that is the environment. No complaints from me here on this one. I got to see Kevin Sullivan be the sadistic SOB he's come to be known as, and Mikey Whipwreck continues to teach me just how durable the human body can be. So we get a few back-to-back video packages of Shane Douglas, Mr. Hughes, and the Public Enemy, which seem to be a faction of sorts at this point with how often they're associated with one another. We then get video packages of Terry Funk, the Bruise Brothers, and Tommy Dreamer, respectively. Turns out this is all to promote another 8-man tag team match. I get the impression it's just one fall this time, but that'll be on later in this episode. So we cut over to the rundown of ECW's tour dates to Paulie, talking about how much this promoting stuff sucks. That being said, he's promoting Sabu versus 2 Cold Scorpio in the process. I popped hard for this on stream, thinking it was more a WCW ECW crossover, but then I got to thinking, I haven't seen 2 Cold on WCW for a minute now. Hell, the last time we saw Marcus and Theodore, it was without 2 Cold. And this match is taking place on June 3rd, and that card doesn't seem to be a super card like when Worlds Collide or the June 24th show, so it'll probably just be talked about and hopefully aired on the June 7th edition of Hardcore TV. Man, Territory TV is weird. Blurriness is blurry. Paulie shifts gears to Terry Funk. He reminds us of what's gotten us to this point, claiming that June 4th is the end of Terry Funk's career and that they're going to take out Dory all the same. It cuts to Terry Funk. Well, his eyes, before zooming out. Terry questions how Paulie and Public Enemy don't know who they are, even when every hardcore fan in the US happens to. I think he took the "who is this man" thing from Paulie a little too literally. Terry turns up the intensity again, and as a result, almost lost track of the promo. He assures us that the Funk brothers will be coming together for the first time in a decade, and claims that he and his brother will not take a beating. He's really spent a bit trying to encourage the Philly fans and hardcore fans to come out to the show. Can't believe I lost track of the fact that they're literally promoting the match in the show. That's always been the point of a promo, I know, but both Paulie started off and Terry Funk ended off being oddly transparent and a little used car salesman in promoting. So we come back to the Twilight Zone, at least it felt like it, as we get this random blonde dude walking down to the ring, getting a wild reaction from the ECW audience. I learned that it's the upset kid, Chad Austin, who's up against someone who's apparently had a major fluke pinfall over Jake Roberts earlier this year in Keith Shera, a guy who we've only seen 2 or 3 times on ECW. And Chad Austin was getting a bigger reaction? And Chad Austin was getting a bigger reaction? It felt like I accidentally was watching a different episode of Hardcore TV all of a sudden. Chad Austin took this crazy 450 backdrop, it looked like. He over-rotated into a faceplant, pretty much. It was an interesting match, I'll say, with Chad Austin scoring a fluke roll-up on Keith, of course. I appreciate that they're willing to feature younger and or smaller wrestlers on this one. On their one and only television show. I suppose when you think about it, the ECW roster is deceivingly small, but I'm still finding it to be cool of them. You know, it's just, I don't know. Very humble of the program to do. You think they would want to feature their more like well-known talent. At least that's what I typed up before they ran a promotion of Chad Austin versus Shane Douglas for the ECW title for next week. Hyping up that it could be a repeat of Mikey Whipwreck. Let me tell you, if we see Shane lose to Chad Austin, the way I howl will not be able to be contained. That being said, my disappointment will be immeasurable. We come back from break to the start of the 8-man tag match, and we cut away during the entrance to a pre-tape from Shane and Hughes earlier in the day. Shane said that he knew that when he set out to become the franchise, there weren't many people he could trust. Sherry, yes, but he knew that he could rely on the toughest man in wrestling today, Mr. Hughes. He more or less went on about Hughes, who was the centerpiece of this whole promo, and holds the mic so Mr. Hughes can show us something that I didn't know he had. A good promo. Hughes tells us that he got a call a while back saying, "I need you to do something for me." He got the same call from Lex Luger a while back, and he got the gold, and Lex got the gold because of Hughes. Now, he stands in front of Shane Douglas, and Shane Douglas has the gold because of Hughes. I understand that he is the man and that everyone who associates with him gets the gold. He talks about the Bruise Brothers calling them, he called them ugly skyscrapers. I don't know why, it's just the way he said it popped me. Says that they don't know a bruise till he gives them a bruise. He reminds himself of Tommy Dreamer's name and tells him he's got something for Tommy to come get. A sidewalk slam. Love the delivery of that. And this promo is great. Shane loved the promo too. He's sitting there cackling up on the side. Hughes has just got some energy to him that I didn't expect. I was under the impression that he was a silent killer from back when I was seeing him in WWF at the top of 93. So we cut back down to the ring where Public Enemy call out Todd Gordon, to which Paulie acts very conspicuously on commentary over it. Todd runs down and tells Terry Funk that he's no longer sanctioned to compete in the match, as he was just served papers over it. In the back, Terry Funk is marching up to JT Smith and Mikey Whipwreck, demanding one of them take his spot, setting on JT as he saw how banged up Mikey was. Very kind and considerate of Terry. Sure enough, JT gets into it as Terry leads him out and gets in the match to even it up. The match was really just a sanctioned brawl, though. There was hardly a psychology to it. The sequel to When Worlds Collide, as Grunge worked over JT's knee, occurred in the ring, as that was the most discernible element of it other than people punching and kicking each other on the outside. There was a spot where JT's knee was apparently blown out, and the ref wanted to stop the match right then and there, but JT wouldn't let him. However, Douglas came in, slapped on a figure four, and the ref eventually called for the bell to win the match. After a shitty fan cam that ended up being pointless, and took us out to the parking lot to be like, oh man, they're brawling out here. And there was no one to find. We saw JT back in the ring, being upset with the ref as he didn't submit. JT ended up clocking the ref and going to grab a chair, wondering where Shane wins. His commentary is like, I've never seen JT like this. And I kind of like it too. As JT got really heated and he stood up for that bullshit, he just got screwed. And this could be the fire that gets him to the next level. Maybe he could be TV champ again. After the ECW Invades tour is promoted, we cut to Sandman and Woman. For the first 15 seconds, I was convinced they were just re-airing a previous promo, but then we get an added bonus of Sandman discounting Cairo over the money he owes him. Honestly, it just sounds like Sandman doesn't want the match at this point, which I think would be a funny twist. Like, please, just pay me this money. I don't really want to wrestle. I just want you to give me my money so we could be on our way. Like, that, I think that would be an interesting angle to go about it. Woman says that Sideways isn't half the pain as we close out. It was a very mid-ending, but this episode was fun for what it was. Enjoyed the TV title match the most, honestly. Was neat to see the two fluke artists face off as well. This episode, it was okay. It was okay overall. I feel like they still need to get the ball rolling, but they're getting so caught up on being like, hey, Supercard, now Supercard, so we're just going to be in build mode for that. But I guess that was kind of the point of a wrestling TV show back in the day. But with that being said, onwards to WCW Saturday Night. Back to WCW, you could say. Return episodes for WCW Saturday Night are usually pretty middling, mainly because they're often recorded before the pay-per-view. This was no such occasion. I think the episode was a good one for it. So we cold open straight into Gene running down Hogan on the set of Thunder in Paradise, questioning if Hogan is indeed going to meet Flair for the WCW World title or not. Tell you something counter bumps up to 2, as Hogan ran in circles for a minute there, but ultimately tells us that if Ric Flair was there on the beach right now, he'd rub his face in the dirt and strip the title from Flair's waist. Claims, however, that if the fans want him to get in the ring with Flair for the title, that they better let him know. So Hogan continues to cock tease the WCW, and while I think it's cool that we got this whole top guy free agent being seen on TV thing going on, I really want to see it go somewhere by now. So we cut to the Saturday Night Arena as Shanghai Pierce makes his entrance to face Marcus Bagwell. Marcus notably is without his partner or his manager, but he still took the win home in this match. It was a fair match, maybe not the best to open, but if they're trying to push Bagwell into singles, it was a good start. I don't really have much more to say about this match, though. He doesn't have his guys out there with him. Is Scorpio really done with WCW? I feel like that's the case. And so we returned from break, to Rob Parker interrupting Mean Gene in the middle of a hotline ad read on the main set, saying he's the one who operates the champions here. Colonel begs Gene's pardon a few times, particularly when Gene says he smells of gasoline. But Colonel Parker is here to introduce us to somebody. Someone who is an important individual with a reason to be here. Says the animosity from his client's opponents often bleed over to him, and while he's not going to get himself a set of tights, he's going to introduce us to a man who's going to hospitalize anyone who raises a hand to the Colonel. Colonel Parker gets into that rambling mode until Gene tells us that he wants to get a word with this man. He asks Ming where he's from and is met with complete silence as Parker starts cackling. Gene sends us to the ring all salty, which has us which has Steve Austin with the Colonel and Ming coming down with him. Steve Austin is coming down for a match with Scott Studd, and this match is really just a backdrop for two things. The first one being them getting a bunch of menacing shots of Ming. The second one being commentary discussing a unification of the world and international championships. Apparently, the commissioner would love to see the titles unified. The commissioners, apparently. Nick Bongwinkle will be on Saturday night next week to let us know regarding the Clash of the Champions event on June 23rd. Okay, well that fixes things, I suppose. I figured it was coming down the line, but for it to be this soon piques my curiosity. But also, that's a busy week of wrestling down the line. June 19th, King of the Ring. June 20th, Monday Night Raw. June 21st, ECW Hardcore TV. June 23rd, Clash of the Champions. June 24th, that ECW Supercard. And June 25th, Saturday night. That's going to be like a 2-hour podcast. I got to figure out how to go about that, whether 1 or 2 videos would be better. That's literally 10 to 11 hours of wrestling as opposed to the normal 3 to 4. This episode of Talkkcade is covering like 6 hours of wrestling, and it's a doozy. Hell, the first half hour of a Slamboree alone. Anyways, Stone Cold is a fantastic worker, a natural badass through and through, and he made an example out of this poor lad. The unfortunate downside to Steve Austin at this time is his poor choice of finishes. The stun gun has always been meh to me, and now that he has this leg lock that looks like they rub butts, I'm not sure it's that much better. Seeing Stunning Steve versus Terrorizing would be an interesting finish sequence between their 2 leg lock submissions. Would be a defining moment and a potential reign for Terra. So, we get a recap of Slamboree from Gene in the Control Center, and we go down to the ring for Arn Anderson in action against Kenny Kendall. Arn gets the win in pretty convincing fashion, still working and acting babyface, which only makes sense, but I just wish Terry would come in for Arn instead of Dustin, because that's what happened in ECW. During Arn's entrance, we find out that Heenan once again got up during Arn's match. Gotta keep it consistent with he's deemed the piss break match, you know? And, if I had to pick someone off this roster, it'd be the Pauls myself, Orndorff and Roma. Arn continues to be one of the more intelligent wrestlers on the roster, and everything he does makes sense from a common sense perspective. The way he catches himself on the ropes, the way he hits you to put you in a position for the next move, his nice forearm club to a rope rebounding opponent, gets Kenny Kendall kneeled over, perfect position for that spike DDT he's been winning with lately. Completely schooled the kid in the best way possible. Of course, like the babyface he is, checking up on him afterwards as we go down to Gene on the main set, who invites Arn Anderson on. Arn says he's tired of warming up, as he's been doing so for months. Colonel Parker and Ming walk into the shot, with Parker telling Arn he's wasting his time talking about regrouping the 4 horsemen. He tells Arn that he's already got a stud stable, and he'd love for Arn to be a part of it. Suggests that Flair is too caught up in his world title business. Arn doesn't take too kindly to Rob, however, telling him that you don't jump a dog in his own backyard. Well, kind of like hitting Terry Funk in his kneecaps at an ECW show? Yeah, dog in his own backyard. Arn doesn't take too kindly to... Oh, I said that already. Arn stands up for Ric Flair while raising his voice, and sure enough, Ming gets in his face for it. Tell you something counter is up to 3. Arn tells Ming today is not the day to press his luck, and tells Parker that while he may have a stable of fine horses, that this horse ain't for sale, and walks off. Parker doesn't seem convinced as we head to break. So are we going to see some angle where Parker puts Anderson in the position of fighting against being contracted by Parker? Because I think that'd be neat. The way he was looking at it was, oh, we'll see about that, son. Like, what, are you going to make him work for you? Like, that felt like that's the only direction that can go, right? So we come back from break for a TV title main event between Zybisko and Regal, and a rematch from Slamboree. Earned in his victory over Regal. And this match played out fairly differently at the start. Regal, now knowing that he can and has been bested by Larry, has a bit more trepidation in engaging with Zybisko, even irritated in the process, and I actually think it's great work being done by Regal. The frustration of arrogant royalty being humbled in real time is hard to capture in just body language, but he does it. The intensified focus didn't make up for the lack of confidence, as Zybisko kept control of him through a gnarly cravat. Cravats are underrated. Should be seen in modern wrestling more. Regal got creative in trying to get out of it by climbing over the top rope, but ends up just getting draped on it. To be fair, it broke the hold. Again, I must reiterate, Regal is unknowingly working with a broken neck at this time. So after sending Zybisko tumbling to the outside, the match really fell in favor of Regal, who went through all the stops to maintain control, within the rules or otherwise. Sir William reached in and smacked Zybisko as he was making a few covers back-to-back on Regal, and the pursuit was on, or at least just enough for Regal to get back on top. Zybisko got a sleeper on Sir William during the ruckus, putting him out at one point, and that's when Regal started to get aggressive like never before. Even so much as throwing punches to Zybisko as he had him mounted. Regal wrestled the rest of the match like the Blackpool Combat Club was already a thing, and I swear this match ruled. Zybisko hit Regal with his own finish, a butterfly suplex, and literally started choking him at one point. These two really made me believe they hate each other. WCW has been really good at that lately. Grudge feuds. I'm so salty that it ended before the match ended. Commentary towards the end implied that the match will continue even if the broadcast ends, with us seeing the result next week, which I think is bogus as it effectively happened right after that. I'm so mad that a match that specifically played to my taste had to get cut off like this. Honestly, I don't know which result would be more upsetting to find out after the fact, a retention or a title change. Still was a great match, one that I didn't give enough love during the watch-along. This episode of WCW did a good job of immediately setting the pace en route to the next big events in Clash of the Champions in about a month's time, with a potential unification of the world titles, some potential Four Horsemen discourse, and a potential free agents WCW future to be given some definition. WCW's looking nice right about now. So, I hope y'all enjoyed this week's Talkkcade. The Tell You Something counter was back down to 3 this week, and it's still ridiculous how often those words get used in pro wrestling promos, though. Let's be real. So, we were bookended by WCW today, and it seemed like it delivered in doing so. I was probably asked on stream last week about... I was asked about this on stream last week, about which of the 3 do I find myself liking more, and it's probably WCW. I enjoy Raw and ECW for different reasons, but WCW is most up my alley right now. Also, hope you folks dug the new layout. Wait for a bit more of an updated aesthetic here on the channel, so I hope it landed with y'all. As always, do drop a like, because it's so easy, it helps so much. And do make sure to keep that bell on for notifications, assuming you aren't already subscribed. With that all being said, y'all, please do make sure to check out the AEW watch-alongs here on the YouTube on Wednesdays and Fridays for Dynamite and Rampage live, respectively. And do tune in at twitch.tv/AdvyDeven at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. GMT on Sundays for Retro WatchaMania, where we do live watch-alongs of these shows that here I am reviewing on YouTube. But until next time, y'all, I'm AdvyDeven. Peace.